Hello and welcome to the Bears and Beers podcast. Yes, we are the unofficial podcast of the Sydney Bears Australian Ice Hockey League team. My name is Gordon Goodenough. It's great to be with you. We are recording on a Monday evening. I'm here with Nathan Graham and Matt Wiggins. First of all, Nathan, if you had the chance as the owner of an NHL team and won the Stanley Cup, and you had two places left, two nameplates left to engrave, would you put myself and Matt down?
Oh,
Or would you put your two children?
I'd just take it to an auction. Two highest bidders, let's go.
And Matt, reversing the question, if you had the choice of putting down either myself and Nathan, who had slaved tirelessly throughout the season to be able to bring a Stanley Cup home to you, would you put our names down? Or would you put down Betty and Artie, your dogs' names down on the cup?
as much as I love Betty and Artie, it's you two boys every time. See, that's the correct answer, Nathan. Go check yourself, man.
I'm not here to be sensible.
Or sensitive, clearly.
No, that's me. You've known me long enough.
Mate, that can be our new logo, like our new motto. We're not here to be sensible. We
Sensitive.
we are glad that you're with us. We've got a lot of hockey to cover. I'd like to show this to Nathan because Nathan's daughter got me this wonderful little Squishmallow Happy Meal toy. That's its character's name is Gordon, and that's my name also. We share the same name. And it seems to be wearing an England jersey, Matt. So it's coming home. I would put down Squishmallow Gordon on the
I'm not
Stanley
getting
Cup.
drawn into it, Gordy. Those words are not going to leave my mouth.
Scarlett will be very pleased. It's quite timely, and this wasn't prepped.
Yes.
She even mentioned this earlier this evening about Gordon really needs to get his act together and get Gordon the Shark on the pod. So, mate, very well done. Very well done. Clinical.
Look, the problem is that Scarlett gave it to me and said that it was for me, but you and I both know, Nathan, that if you bring a soft toy home and you've got a 5-year-old at home like I do, it just becomes their toy. And I know my place in the pecking order in this household, and it's below Tilly. So, look, I'm glad that she is asleep in bed and is unaware that I have borrowed her Squishmallow. But we have a lot of hockey to get through from the weekend. Nathan, let's get. Do you want to take us through the out of town results?
Absolutely. I think I've assumed this role by this point. Kicking off on Saturday, the Ice Dogs were 9-7 winners over the Lightning at Macquarie. There were 16 goals in this game, 106 shots on net, which is certainly a number. The Dogs scored 6 in the first period. Cale Costa had a huge game. He put away 5. Daniel Chen, 1 goal, 3 assists. Kabore Dunn, 2 goals. He also had 3 assists on the evening. Vertesh, 3 assists. For the Brisbane Lightning, Tanner Hops and Grant Hebert, they both had 5-point nights. But certainly not a good night to be either a goaltender or a piece of rubber over at Macquarie. Over to the Mustangs, Adrenaline. Mustangs run out 7-1 winners in Adelaide. Brodie Crane with a hat-trick. Gator with a 4-point evening. Klomp, Caron, who actually happens to be an ex-teammate of our own Kevin Sadowski, and Joey Hughes all had 3-point nights. Giesbrecht stopped 27 of 28. The Perth Thunder had an OT win over the Ice in Perth, 4-3. Charlie Smart had a 935 save percentage for the win. Horacek got the OT winner and put up 4 points in that game. Plouffe with 3 assists. That closed off the Saturday games over to Sunday. Newcastle, they closed out back-to-back wins for the weekend, beating the Lightning 9-5 and the Hunter. Another big shot count in this game, 92 shots recorded in this game. Riley Klugerman, 5 points. Francis Drolet, 4 goals. Genzanov, Hebert and Shanker all had 3-point nights. The Mustangs were big winners over Adelaide, 9-1, including a 6-goal third period from the Mustangs. Gator with 4 goals, which took his weekend total to 9 points across the weekend. Lindell and Dorsey had 3 assists each. Suture a goal and an assist, and Seb Woodland stopped 20 of 21 for the win. And finally, the Melbourne Ice were 6-2 winners over the Thunder in the Wild West. Tyrone Bronte, 2 goals, 2 assists. Erdogan, 3 apples. Josh Adkins chipped in with a couple of goals. And Tatsu Ishida rebounded with a 9.49 in net for the win. That closed this off.
Yeah, and a first goal scorer, first AIHL goal for Lachlan Hodge as well. Always nice to see a player get their first career AIHL goal. And let's get into the action for us. We had the game on Saturday against the Newcastle North Stars, and this one it ends up being the North Stars who take it out 6-3 winners. We ended up just losing the one period in this game. We left the first period tied. We gave up 3 goals in the second, and then in the third period it was 2 goals apiece. Matt, what did you see from the start of this one?
Yeah, tough night at the office, I think, all in all. I mean, that's a really somewhat insightful summary of us only losing one period, but sitting at home watching it on the couch, felt as though we really lost more than the one period. Started off, worked very, very hard in the first period, and obviously went in 1 goal apiece. But I felt we really lost our way in the second period, and even though both teams scored 2 goals in the third, my feeling was we were distinctly second best in the third. So look, Newcastle a very strong team at home. I felt a little bit sorry for the boys because they did work hard and laid a foundation, but the game got away from us quite quickly in terms of the second period, goals at regular intervals, and then trading goals in the third. But 6-3 up in the Hunter, always going to be a tough challenge. But disappointing night at the office from my perspective.
Was that your thoughts as well, Nathan?
Yeah, I think so. I was actually sitting at a family event for Mel, and had the game on in the background, and I was looking like an absolute lunatic at the table. Certainly wasn't enjoying a lot of parts of this game. I think special teams as well was a really big story to come out of this. Newcastle scored 2 goals. I think they were maybe 50% on the power play for the evening, and conversely, our power play was doing very little, and they actually served up a bunch of opportunities for us. I think that was definitely a bit of a talking point out of the night. I think we actually gave up, probably more opportunities on the power play going the other way than what we were perhaps generating on the Newcastle net, which certainly isn't part of the program when you draw it up. And certainly what Matt said, I think, the first period, the game was probably, there for the taking for either team. But that second period, Newcastle really asserted their dominance on the game. And, from that point out, I really felt like, we struggled. I think we struggled for chance generation. There's probably, some goals there that as a collective unit on the ice we'd probably like to have back. Certainly not an enjoyable game from our standpoint.
couple of bright spots. Gustav Ramler Jensen had a really nice goal in the final minute of the first period to tie things up, and that continued his point streak. Alex Gauthier scored in the third period, which gave him 100 career AIHL points in 78 games played, so congrats to him. And then Ruben Nalos scored in the third period as well. And for Ruben, that was the fifth game in a row in which he had recorded a point. Lucas Herman as well got a couple of assists. So, statistically, there were some bright spots. I know the game didn't go in our favour, and it felt, it felt like the game got out of hand in that second period, and it just had the feeling of inevitability. I think Newcastle's a really tough team to play in that building at the best of times, but when you're trailing, they really know how to squeeze the game out. And in that third period, Matt, I know you mentioned that trend that we've seen where once we score to try to get back into games, we seem to allow a quick one.
Yeah, it happened again. Just inside of 2 minutes. And Goat scored quite early on in the period to get us back to 2-4, and then at 17:30 we conceded a fifth goal. But just picking up on a couple of your points, Gordy, I thought Gustav's goal reminded me a little bit of the one he scored against the Mustangs. He sort of stick handled through traffic and then hit bar down, beautiful shot, shows us that good quick release and those good hands. I think a couple of very disappointing things. I spoke to Nico after the game on Sunday, but didn't particularly quiz him specifically about this. But I noticed we gave away two penalties in the offensive zone. One led to a power play goal. I think there was a high sticking call against Finn in the O zone, and Kenny got pinged for tripping in the O zone. So, if I put my old coach's hat on, completely different sport, not ice hockey, I'd imagine that the boys behind the bench would be quite, looking for improvements in terms of where we're taking penalties. We never want to take a penalty at all, but O zone pens are always ones that seem to come back and bite you. But I think, as you said, Gordy, a little bit of that feeling of inevitability. I think Skachkov's power play goal was a 3-on-1 at one point, and a player as good as him's never going to turn that opportunity up. So tough night for Hayden, obviously facing a lot of traffic in front of the net and odd man rushes and a lot of shot volume against. But one that we needed to sort of flush and rinse and move on from for the game on Sunday.
Yeah, sorry, Nathan, you go.
No, you go, Gordy.
Well, I was just going to say, heading into that evening, we were keeping a close eye on the Perth versus Melbourne Ice game, because potentially, depending on the result of that game, we could have been bounced out of a playoff spot. That with the Ice Dogs winning, they'd already leapfrogged us. And the Melbourne Ice were, a threat to go into 6th and us into 7th.
Yeah, and I think just to circle back with what Matt said about this trend of sorts where we gain an advantage and all of a sudden we're almost handing that advantage back quite often after we score. Momentum within a game, like any sport, hockey's definitely. It's the case here where momentum in a game is absolutely critical. You cannot afford, particularly against good teams, you certainly can't afford to just hand any advantage that you work hard for back to your opposition. I also think from sort of that thematical perspective, again, we're referencing, a lot of the same players. We're referencing, the Herms and the Goose and Ruben, etc., as well as stick penalties at really tough moments in games. These are just some of the little items that we need to continue to work on heading into the back end of the season, where these are moments in games and events in games that are, they're in our control. So, it is unfortunate that, again, in this game, some of these themes were prominent. But I think it's also interesting that we've been talking about some of the same items over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of other notes I made, Nathan. And again, I was watching the game from home and feeling, less than happy as a supporter. But as the game progresses and Newcastle were exerting their authority and influence over it, I felt they were winning more puck battles. They were winning, cycling the puck and winning the pucks off the boards more frequently. And I think the opportunities that we had on the power play, I noticed a couple of times that we weren't quite getting set up, and that that element of patience, getting the players in the right places, getting traffic in front of the goaltender. So we're squeezing a little bit, obviously trying to do the right thing, but trying to do the right thing, not quite waiting out time enough and getting set up properly. But the Newcastle are a decent team in front of a very vocal crowd up there at the Hunter, and Ruben, again, great to see him get on the score sheet. I had a very, very quick chat with him on Sunday night, and he's certainly doing himself proud in terms of getting on the score sheet. But as I said earlier on, one that you need to just flush and try and move past and make sure you're in the right mindset for the game on Sunday, which proved to be a super big 6-pointer, right?
And as you said, you certainly need to give credit to a team like Newcastle. They work hard. They're a talented group. They're quite an established group. They're very strong at home. So, whilst we talk about some of these items, again, you do need to give your opposition credit. They're working hard on earning some of these opportunities in games. But, look, I probably don't have anything to add in relation to Saturday's game, I don't think.
Yeah, let's move on to Sunday very quickly then. I think we all felt that Sunday's game ratcheted up in importance based on what happened on Saturday. We needed points, and we needed something to hang our hat on and say, yes, we can come to this podcast tonight and be able to say something, that's have a bit of fun. And it ended up, we had the Rhinos coming into town, and they'd been in a really rough patch of form. Still in the playoff race, just a few points outside of finals contention, but with having played more games, a little bit more tricky for them. Only 6 points secured over their past 12 games, so out of a possible 36, just the 6 points. So really, really unfortunate run of form for them. And we ended up, just a quick summation, first period, got out to a 3-goal lead. Second period was scoreless. Then we scored another 2 goals to begin the third. So 5 unanswered goals. And then the Rhinos got 1 goal midway through the period and 1 in the final, 33 seconds left. Let's dig into this one. Gents, what did you see?
I might be tough with this one. I didn't see a lot of this game, particularly at the start of the first after we had that really unfortunate incident. And I'd actually probably like to kick off with this. We obviously had that incident where the start of the game was delayed. There was some damage to one of the plexiglass panels in warm-ups. And just a massive shout out to everyone involved, the 2 teams, staff, referees, certainly our group of awesome volunteers around the rink. I think everything was handled in a really composed, productive manner. Rink staff, were communicating very well, and also the production crew at Thought Fox. Just a super quick shout out to say, a job well done to everyone involved there, and also to the crowd. Everyone, remained engaged, and we're having some fun with some of the different activities that were taking place in and around the rink. I think certainly what I saw in the first was maybe some things that we also saw in our previous 2 home games, Canberra, and I think previous to that perhaps Brisbane Lightning, where energy was strong. Again, we were moving through rotation. There was good forecheck. You could tell the guys were up for it. And again, all of that effort reflected on the scoreboard. We got the crowd into the game early. Good to see the power play convert early again. You know, we talk about special teams on the Saturday. To get the power play moving, you know, early in that game, you know, that adds an additional element. And it probably set a tone, I think, to a degree.
Yeah, I would agree, Nathan. Great start. Great start from the scoreboard perspective, but also quite fun to see 2 officials hit deck in the first 15 seconds. That's always a bit of a giggle.
You're a savage.
I am a savage, yeah. But no, good on Dex, back on the score sheet after we called out his lack of hair on his top lip. I had a quick chat with his lovely partner over the weekend. She said, thank goodness you've mentioned it as well. It needs to make a reappearance. And we asked, the man delivered back on the score sheet, Dex, with the opener. Power play goal in the first period. Brian was causing havoc in the crease, so great to see Brian back in and doing what Brian does well. And then obviously Noah, he's scored 2 Sundays in a row now after a really nice goal in Canberra, where he used a defender as a sort of screen to hit the top corner of Tetz's net last weekend. Redirect from the shot from the point, and he sort of reacted very quickly and picked up his own rebound to put us 2-0 ahead. So I did notice the Rhinos didn't have a shot on goal until about 10 minutes into the game. But a theme that I was entertaining guests and at the game, so didn't watch as much as I'd normally like, but I did kind of say to the guys, look, watch Kimmer, he hardly moves, he plays the angles, he uses his big body, lets pucks hit him. And, waiting for a shot for 10 minutes into a game is not easy for any goaltender. But Kimmer did exactly what it said on the tin when he was called into action. He was there, he was cool, calm, collected. And then Kev got a third in the first period, his first of the season. Shot from the point that got through traffic. Finwithy providing the screen, so great to go in 3-0 ahead after the first.
Yeah, and against a goalie, Anand Oberoi, who has caused us a bit of grief at the Macquarie Ice Rink back in July 2024. The last time that he played the Bears at Macquarie, he faced 79 shots and made 75 saves in a 5-4 shootout win for the Rhinos. So a guy who's certainly capable of stealing games against the run of play. I thought getting to him early was really important. That power play goal by Dexter Moselle was excellent. Got us on track. It also gave us the opening goal of the game for the 9th time in 10 games against Newcastle. We gave up the first goal of the game for the first time since the end of May. So it was a really strong start by the guys. I thought Kimmer, even though we were up 3-0, I thought he made some excellent saves. We ended up getting a power play later in the first period, and we gave up 1 or 2 breakaway chances. Sangho Bay, he stopped him, and Sangho Bay is a guy that scored against Kimmer on a breakaway at Arena earlier this year, just a few weeks ago. So I thought he did really well, and it felt kind of similar. I know we talked with Riser after that Brisbane Lightning game, and he said, you look at Plimley's performance and you think, 8-0, he probably didn't face a lot of shots, but he made some key saves early that kept the team the lead, kept the other team off the scoreboard, and just gave the boys a big boost. And I think Kimmer really did that for his team with some outstanding saves.
Yeah, absolutely. He certainly from what I could see, he had a massive game. And it almost had that feel, and I hate saying it, but it had that feel where maybe he was going to pull off the shutout. Obviously, it wasn't to be, in that second half of the third. But, what you say there, Gordy, in terms of, the ability for the guys to draw energy from, a performance like that, it gives the guys confidence. When Kim is having a strong one, it probably elevates everyone else. It has them, playing a bit more free. So yeah, I definitely think there's stock to take out of that for sure. And we've seen this for such a long time. Kim's ability to sort of take over games and be very commanding in net. And it's a huge boon for us when he's out there with that degree of form. And from memory, I think he was very strong the last time we played the Rhinos, which wasn't all that long ago either in Erina.
Yep, you're exactly right. That was the 5-3 win where he shut the door in the third period when the game was on the line and allowed the team, and pretty much for most of the second, if I recall, Matt, as well.
Yeah,
he shut the door as well.
Yeah, 2 periods of that game he was playing stellar net. So I did think, and this is me being completely biased. Central Coast did look like a team that were in a bit of a slump, and they obviously lost Bay, I think, at the end of the first. I was trying to watch the replay to see exactly what happened. I think he took a bit of a hit behind the net when he went on one of his skate rounds. I'm assuming that was when he picked up the injury, but it didn't seem too much in periods 2 and 3, unless I completely missed him. But yeah, Bouchard was wandering around and trying to light a fire under the team. And apart from those sort of breakdowns and those odd rushes that Kim bailed us out on, they did look like a team that was struggling a little bit at the moment. So, but you've got to put teams away, and that's what we did. Brian got our fourth early in the third on the power play, very early in the third, 15 seconds in. A little bit of controversy. I think he just about scored Gordy on the 5-on-3, but officials said it was 1 second into the 5-on-4, so our second power play evaporated in smoke. But Zander then got another power play goal, but on an incredible stretch pass from Finn, Withy, almost the length of the ice, and he picked it up and scored a really nice little goal in tight on Oberoi, lifting the puck up and into the top of the net. So 5-0, we're almost home and hosed, but they've got a couple of late ones which we could argue possibly flattered them a little bit. But yeah, great bounce back from the boys.
Absolutely. And that's what you highlight there, Matt, that stretch pass from Finn was such a great heads-up play, executed perfectly. And then, Xander, put the garnish on it with a really nice finish, roofed it backhand. That was a really pretty goal, actually.
Yeah.
Good to see Xander back on the score sheet. His 7th of the season, I think, Gordy?
Yeah, 7th of the season, but that's his 3rd power play goal. So he's been a real big part of that second power play unit. I thought that was another thing that I took away after we went 0 for 6 on the power play in Newcastle on Saturday. We had a really strong 3 for 5, and both power play units scored. You had Dex Moselle, Brian Chambers for the top unit, and then Alexander Wardlaw for the second unit. Another just a lovely statistical thing that I enjoyed was that we had 8 goals scored for the Bears over the weekend, and 8 different goal scorers, which I think is a nice balance. And if you look at just the Sunday, we put the lines in a blender, and we had players moving up and down the lineup, and players from all 4 lines recorded points during the game. So I thought that was a really nice balanced attack. We're missing, guys. We're missing, Nick Seitz was an absolutely dominant, averaging a goal a period. He's out. The question is who's going to step up, and it's been a job by committee.
Which is critical for us. I think that's the biggest takeaway from the weekend, to be fair. And sorry to jump in there, Matt. I think what you just raised there, Gordy, is absolutely critical for us. When we have contributions up and down our lineup, particularly in that forward group, that generally will mean really good things for us. And certainly, I think when you look at this league, they're the two keys, right? If you can get production by committee and you can have your depth scoring really show up when it matters, and you can pair that with winning, the special team battle. This league is very much driven by special team effectiveness. Again, this game, we saw both of those elements very prominent. We saw the collective scoring piece, and we saw us win the special team battles. All of a sudden, you're on the right end of the result. So, it's not always a complex science, but it's easier said than done as well.
Mm. And you made the point I was going to make, Nathan. I mean, obviously, Gordy talked about 8 different goal scorers, but I noticed more ice time for Mac Tutton on the back end. Espo was out there again, leading by example and just showing us those veteran smarts in the second and third. Colby Schumack got ice time and Tegan Rippon got ice time. So, yeah, Riser was definitely putting the boys out and, giving the opportunity to stretch their legs, and everybody contributed. So, yeah, good signs, and very much that sort of next man up mentality where everybody's putting shift in, everybody's trying to do a job for their teammates, and everybody's contributing either on the score sheet or by playing solid shifts in the defensive zone when we're looking after a lead and trying to see us home to the 3 points.
Yeah, and just a shout out to Riser. He's playing his former head coach in Ron Kaprowski. This is the first time that he's facing him at the Macquarie Ice Rink, the former captain playing his former coach. And I thought did a really good job with the lineup and the decisions and the whatever was needed to be able to get the team fired up and motivated and prepared for this one. He got the job done, and congrats to him as well.
Absolutely.
Yep, definitely. And obviously some changes to lines from the Saturday. Credit there, and I think the guys probably made it a bit easier on the coaching staff on Sunday as well. I think we had one offsetting penalty, a roughing call in the second, but outside of that, we were relatively disciplined in this game, and then that in turn allows the coaching staff to roll lines, to give guys up and down the lineup opportunities, and again that's just a healthy equation for everyone. You're not running your top guys into the ground. It's just a much cleaner, effective equation if you can stay out of the box and just allow rotations to play their part in the game.
This must be the first 2-game weekend, Nathan, we've gotten through in the last month or so without any serious injuries as well.
Yes, which is, given the rotten luck that we've had so far this year, certainly the worst that anyone can remember. It's nice to enter a new week without any fresh injury concerns. So that's also a win out of yesterday as well.
Just a couple of point streaks as well continue. Gustav Remmler-Jensen, he's up to a 10-game point streak. Lucas Herman, 18-game active point streak. And out of those 18 games, 13 of them, he's recorded multiple points. It's really impressive. He's only gone 2 games this season without recording a point. And that was all within the first 3 games of the season, the first and the third game of the season. So he's been really consistent, and he's been providing a lot of assists really over the last couple of weeks and weekends, and the other players on his line mates have benefited.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Lucas to me looked like he was having fun on Sunday night. I mean, obviously he's lost line mates in the last month, 3 or 4 weeks, and we've seen Ruben promoted to the top line in Nick's place, but Lucas looked like he got a spring in his step on Sunday night. Some beautiful rushes, hard work on the back check, leading by example, some beautiful stick handling, that elite passing, hard work, getting pucks back in the O-zone and keeping the young boys involved in plays. So it was really, really good to see Lucas, being that dominant player that we know he can be. It really looked like he was having fun out on the ice again.
Yeah, I think he dangled two guys in that game for shots on goal on Oberoi, and it's something I haven't seen a lot from him this season. He's done it once or twice. I know he did it against the Melbourne Ice on May 9th. He was having a fun time there, and one of the common denominators I think was Brian Chambers being on his line, and Brian Chambers played a really good game on Sunday, I thought, for a first game back. He hadn't played since May against the Adelaide Adrenaline when he left the game after two periods, scored 3 points in that game in two periods. Comes back, picks up an assist, picks up a goal, and it was a really nice goal too, off a fine play from Kevin Sadowski.
Yeah, that was a really neat play, great finish, and certainly great to see Brian, be able to celebrate that after such a long period out. He's a class guy, the way that he's conducted himself off the ice, during a period that I'm sure has been very, very frustrating for him. He's probably just finding his straps before he went down with that injury. So thrilled to see him, put that one away and see a big smile on his face. He's a guy that adds a hell of a lot around our group, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was a sharp finish, really beautiful one-timer down on one knee.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty.
I'm looking forward to the pictures this week.
I think one other player I would be remiss not to mention, Tyrell Clare. He's running a 3-game point streak, which is the longest point streak of the season so far for him. He's picked up 12 assists in 19 games. Very useful. He's the one that provided the initial shot that Noah Moncrief deflected and then collected the rebound and scored. So he's been an ever-present presence on the blue line for the Bears. And Matt, as the head of the Tyrell Clare fan club, how did you see his game?
Yeah, I've got to be very careful about what I say. No, Tyrell does always just quietly goes about his business, and good to see him on a three-game point streak. I did notice he kept his customary 2 PIMs a game up as well, so we had a bit of a free Tyrell chant going on around us. But yeah, good on you, Tyrell. Keep it up, mate.
And just to add to that, Tyrell's been huge for us this year. I feel like his leadership capabilities taken another step this year, with what has been predominantly a real makeshift defensive group for us, not by design, but that's just the way that it's unfolded this year, due to injury and availability. Tyrell's just been such a solid game in, game out, a guy that we can rely on. As you say, Gordy, he has also contributed at the other end, but he has been one of our our secret weapons. He's played a lot of minutes. He's been very dependable. I think he's played with such a high floor this year, and that's what you need. And whilst I'm sure that he loves playing the minutes, it's a lot to ask. Particularly in back-to-back weekends, and he really hasn't put a foot wrong for us. And sure, he's experienced. He's one of our senior guys. He wears a letter for a reason. But just to see the consistent, high level of contribution, game in, game out, just going about his business. Tyrell's playing the best hockey when perhaps you don't notice him as much. He's been absolutely massive for us this year so far.
Ultra reliable.
That's for sure.
So, are we finished wrapping up that game? Any final thoughts before we move on to next weekend's games?
No, great. I mean, as we said, 6-point game. I think they were very, very needed points. Not many of the other results went our way. If you pull it apart in terms of where we sit in relation to the other teams scrapping for those positions, maybe the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th positions. Not too many results went the way that we would have liked. So I think it was great to see. And I did have a quick chat with Nico and asked him what he said to him and Riser said to the boys, and they just said, go out, have fun, express yourselves. And it looked as though that's exactly what the boys did on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those playing at home that have a strong attention to detail, just referencing the box score, the goal that we were sort of alluding to earlier with Finn's fantastic setup for Xander's goal. The box score at the moment shows the goal Xander from Goose. That will be corrected, and obviously Finn and Ruben will pick up assists on that goal. So that's just it's a very small piece of detail, but it's something that I've actually received a couple of messages about today, and that will be eventually resolved at some point this week.
Well, that's
put a pin in Gustav's.
yeah. Yep.
Yes, sorry, Goose. I'm sure you're listening. Sorry about that.
Finn,
Yes.
you're buying the beers, I think, for Gustav. Oh, sorry, lemonades.
You know me, I'm not very generous.
So yes, Gustav's point streak ends at 9 games, but very, very impressive for him nonetheless. And I think even without that assist, he's on 24 points for the season.
Wow.
I haven't actually looked it up.
I think that's right. I think at the
yeah.
moment he's showing 25 through 21.
Yes. So yes, memory
You know
is
your
correct.
numbers.
It's all I am. It's all I've got to offer. I need to know my numbers.
Ahead of me.
Let's move on to next weekend, and it's a pretty big one. We end up doing the Melbourne double. The Melbourne trip, always a fun time, and a tough trip with both Melbourne teams, very competitive, obviously, and looking for a place at finals. We are, I don't want to say fortunate, but we will be facing the Melbourne Ice after it'll be their second half of a back-to-back. We play them on Saturday, and that might be useful because although we play the Mustangs on Sunday and that's a big game too, I feel like the head-to-head against Melbourne, that feels monumental.
I don't want to be repetitive, but this weekend feels massive. It's a huge opportunity. The games against the Melbourne Ice are always eventful. I think we can take a lot out of our previous fixture at Macquarie. I think we were actually quite dominant in that game through probably 45 minutes. We had some lapses. We covered that at the time. But there's certainly a lot to take out of that performance. But they are fully built. They've got a lot of weapons, but really looking forward to this game. I think just the importance of this game for both teams. Is it should set a really nice tone heading into the game. And as you say, Gordy, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to understand the science in terms of what that means. Playing them, second game of back-to-back after the Friday derby, which are obviously always, fairly involved affairs. Does that work in our favour? Not sure. But, I'm sure the guys are going to be up for this. Huge points. We're obviously competing with both of the Melbourne teams, very closely on the ladder this year. So again, a 6-point game. Let's build off some of the positives we set during the last game at Macquarie, and this should be a real beauty of a game.
Ice have got some injury concerns of their own, I think, gents.
Look, there's certainly a lot of talk around the league about David Booth. My understanding is he didn't play in that last classic game. He was listed for the Ice and their games in Perth, but didn't play. What that means, who knows? I think from a hockey perspective, the ability to see David Booth out on the ice is obviously, a great level of entertainment for fans. Whether he plays or not, who knows? He obviously came in, for that game against us at Macquarie and ended up being quite instrumental in their win, late in the game. So, if we're being selfish here and we're being competitive, we'd be happy for him to sit out another weekend. But I'm not beyond him. I'm not entirely sure what other question marks there are about the ice heading into the weekend. Perhaps you gents may know more if there is there.
No, my sources are non-existent at this stage, so I can provide no insightful comments on David Booth's injury at all, except just echoing that I had been surprised that he didn't end up playing in Perth on Saturday. I know Simon Dupré was not listed on the Ice Hockey Classic roster, neither was Booth, and that wasn't a surprise in itself, thinking about the big weekend that the Melbourne Ice had in Perth. It's always a difficult balance for head coach Kerry Goulet. But it was a surprise not to see him hit the ice. And then Josh Adkins was flown in after playing in the Ice Hockey Classic on the Saturday to play in Sunday's game for the Ice, and he had a really good game. Scored shorthanded, scored on the power play, and was a really good presence for them. So, I mean, no matter what Melbourne Ice team we face, whether it's with David Booth, whether it's Suns David Booth, it's going to be a tough game.
Absolutely. You look at the list for the Ice. This is standard issue. There's a lot of talent and potent offensive ability at the top of their lineup. And I think this year, they've had Tyrone Bronte come in. Jed Lake's had a massive season. I just saw then Jed Lake's got 18 goals through 21 games. Mm-hmm. I knew he was having a big year, but that's impressive. I don't know where that sits in the league in terms of goal scoring, leadership, but that would have to be up there. Erdogan, Schindel has proven his ability as an impact import. Matt Caruana, I think I've said before, he's one of my favourite players in the league to watch. Absolutely phenomenal, really, really, well-rounded player. Good leader by all accounts. You've got the experience and ferocious nature of Jamie Burke and what he brings. You just referenced Adkins as well, Gord. They've got a really strong group, and they can do damage. There's probably multiple lines there that can do damage if you're not on your toes. So, again, these are the ingredients for what should make a great game.
So this is a list of the local players who have more goals than Jed Lake so far this season. Are you ready?
I'm ready. It's going to be short.
Kel Costa.
Yep.
Scott Timmins.
There you go.
That's it.
Yep.
He's in good company.
Yep, and Scott Timmins is a local.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nuts. So congrats to Jed Lake. He went to North America to develop last season. Wasn't on the Melbourne Ice last season, and boy, he's come back as an impact player for this season. So good for him.
Yeah, in 24 he had three goals for 3 points through 7 games. Now he's got 18 goals for 26 points through 21. As even perhaps our most relevant comparison could be Goose. I think he was perhaps half a point a game guy at the Rhinos. He's come in here and obviously had a fantastic season for us. So it's really good to see. Stories like this in our league are fantastic, and he'll definitely be one guy to watch closely on Saturday. That's for sure.
Yeah, the Melbourne Ice, in their past 10 games, they've got points in 9 of those 10 games. So they're one of the form teams of the competition. Looking forward to that one for sure. Melbourne Mustangs will then be the task for us to overcome on the Sunday. And the Melbourne Mustangs, they're in a bit of good form as well. Scored 16 goals in Adelaide, conceded just the 2. They've been on a bit of a hot streak as well. What are your thoughts about this one, guys?
Yeah, they're a decent side, aren't they? Looking at their season stats, they share the load around as well. Lots of players have got 30 points on the season. Bunch of other players have got 20s. So obviously they've got lots of weapons and well-oiled machine. I thought the win against them at Macquarie was very, very decent 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we can just hope for the same effort, same application, same execution from the boys. It's going to be very tough though. It's two huge games this weekend.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think one thing that really pops off the page in relation to the Mustangs, they've got 10 players producing at a point a game clip or better. We spoke earlier in this episode about the importance of collective scoring by committee, meaningful contributions up and down your lineup. That in itself, and look, yes, that's a stat on paper, but that's very meaningful and it's very impressive. I don't have the numbers on this, but that would have to be, one of the best, if not potentially the best across the league this year, I think.
Yeah, I think from memory we have 8 players who are producing at or above a point per game, but some of those, one of them is for example, Riser, who got 4 points in 3 games. So you've got some guys who, Lander is another one who's unavailable. Logan Brody is another one who's unavailable. So we've got some, but they've got some high producing players, and they've got some guys who are not just averaging 1 point a game, but Scott Timmins 46 points in 23 games, so over 2 a game. David Gator 32 points in 15 games, over 2 points per game. It's a luxurious production from the Melbourne Mustangs.
Yeah, it really is. It really is, and they've even got some young talent in there. I think Sucha this year, has been really effective for them. Coming in, which has been super impressive for such a young guy. Obviously someone like Brody Lindell, we know what Brody's talents can produce as well. So I think this is going to be an interesting matchup. I almost, when I look at both of the Melbourne teams, I do feel like they're a very different type of matchup.
Yeah.
And certainly the depth in that Mustangs lineup, and I say that with absolute respect to the Melbourne Ice, they're configured and built a little bit differently. This will definitely cause some headaches for the coaching staff in terms of how we do match up on the road against a very deep, particularly forward group for the Mustangs on the Sunday.
And 2 very decent goalies as well. I'm guessing Giesbrecht and
Seb Woodlands.
I know, yeah, is Sheeta for the Ice.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, is Sheeta for the Ice, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And Brody Crane is one to watch as well. He's got a really impressive resume, and when he played us, it was one of his first games since coming over, and we ended up keeping him pretty quiet in that game. We held him off the score sheet, but just in the past, in the past 8 games, he scored 29 points in 8 games, which includes a 7-point game and a 6-point game, 3 4-point games. Like, just unbelievable. His skating is elite. He reminds me a lot. I'm really interested to see him, because he reminds me of when we played Canberra, and the skating. Who was the guy on Canberra? This is terrible. I've had a mental lapse. Bates, yeah, Peter Bates. So yeah, looking forward to seeing him.
I did reach out to Gooch and ask him if there were seats on his private jet, the one that he was using to fly players to and from the Classic. He said no, not for you 3. So I'll pick you boys up on Wednesday for a weekend in Melbourne. We'll drive, because we're good at road trips, right?
Don't forget, we're on the south coast, so we'll take the horse and cart.
You won't have to stop and charge that up.
It's enough out of you, mate. You're in the rear view.
If we need to do as many toilet breaks as we did on Sunday, Matt, with Nathan, we're going to have to leave straight after recording this podcast to be able to get there before punch
high level electricity, Gordy, but you just went straight to the bathroom, didn't you?
Thank you, listeners. That's all for today. Thanks very much.
I have no standards. Yes. Well, it should be a cracking weekend. I'm really looking forward to this one, and I'm optimistic. I think I don't know if there's anything official, but we did, Matt, you did get some intel on Nick Sites after this chatting with Nico, assistant coach Nico Demopoulos.
Well, I think Nick shared the view that all three of us share is we hope he's back this weekend. So, yeah, it'd be great to see Nick back on the ice and driving play on that top line and, fill in the net again as he did in his first few weeks for us. But, yeah, it's an enormous opportunity for the boys to make a statement. If you head into Melbourne for a back-to-back against the Mustangs and the Ice and come away with points, serious points, that's gonna make a big statement to the league and then set us up for the games. I think we've got Thunder the week after, is that right? So it doesn't get much easier, albeit that game's back at Macquarie. So we are really sort of fighting our way through the teams at the top end of the table at the moment. So yeah, let's get out there, boys, and cause some trouble in Melbourne.
Yeah, I think the weekend after we've got the Ice Dogs, and then we've got the Rhinos, and then it's the weekend after we've got Perth. So a huge few weekends for us. And this weekend, just a side note, this weekend is the last weekend of the regular season that we don't have a game at home. So for the rest of the season, after this weekend, after we played the Melbourne teams, we have at least one game at home every weekend to finish out the regular season, which is, I think, with the home crowd that we have at the Macquarie Ice Rink, that's going to be a huge boost.
Absolutely. And I think one takeout from yesterday's game as well, this just popped into my mind. Once again in the third period, there was some really impressive chants and a great energy coming from the grandstand in the third period. A little challenge for the fans that are listening. Let's have that consistent from puck drop, because even sort of sitting down where we were, Matt, the energy levels doubled. It was absolutely fantastic. You could almost sort of see the guys react to that, and it just makes such a difference. Particularly as games, go on, where guys are getting a bit more fatigued, etc. And it was really nice to listen to the energy that was being created out of certain pockets of our fan group. So, just a small challenge. Let's see that take place over the course of the game, and then maybe we can start striving for the very best game day experience and atmosphere in the league.
My party loved it, Nathan. They were blown away by the product on the ice. They were blown away by the size of the crowd. I think I mentioned to you, after the end of the first period, 3 of them wandered off and came back wearing merch, loving every second of it. So, yeah, every time you speak to anyone, any of the players or any of the coaching staff, it's a singular message. The crowd is the sixth man. So I echo that, Nathan. Let's get those chants going, get behind the boys, and create some hostility. Macquarie is a difficult place for teams to come. Let's greet them with noise and that sustained noise throughout the entire afternoon and evening.
Absolutely, and even some of the football sort of structured chants. Even though the World Cup's only got another week or so to go, it doesn't mean those chants need to get sort of put in the locker. I thought there's some really creative work happening across the fan group. So let's bring it and cheer the boys home over the course of our last, I think it's 5 games at home.
Well, any final thoughts, gents, before we call this one a day?
Everyone's in the battle. I feel like we're very repetitive in saying, they're 6-point games and they're massive games and everything's riding on these weekend fixtures. But the reality is there is what appears to be a 7-horse race I don't want to rule out anyone, but at the moment, that is the way that that's the complexion that it's starting to take. Every game is massive for every team. That's just the nature of the league this year. And this weekend, I just look at it, and I'm sure the guys are the same. It's a massive opportunity for us. And we can go down there and beat both of these teams.
Mm. Yeah, 3 points separates fourth from seventh.
Yep.
And you'd hate to finish seventh, 1 point behind sixth, and with a distinct margin from seventh to eighth, which looks as though it's, with the games that the Rhinos have played, they played 23 more than almost everyone in the league except for the Mustangs.
Yeah.
Their ability to make ground up is probably getting smaller obviously getting smaller by the weekend. So very, very tight for those top 6 places. So super important.
Yeah, agreed. If we can keep, and I'll definitely sound like I'm oversimplifying this, but if we can keep our discipline in check, and we can, establish an early energy and get on the forecheck and assert ourselves early, we know we're going to get strong goaltending. I think our sample is big enough to make that statement. I really like our chances here this weekend. I feel like the outcome of this weekend is very much in our control, and hopefully we see an ability to win that special team battle, stay out of the box, get your lines rolling, and hopefully good things come off the back of that. And we've already seen this year we can absolutely skate with these guys and more, both of these teams.
Brilliant. Well, thanks as always, gents. Thank you too for listening. Thank you. We've received some lovely comments as well that continue to come in from people who are enjoying the podcast, enjoying the content. I've provided some comments and suggestions. Thank you for those. If you've got any questions, anything that you want us to cover on the podcast as well, feel free reach out to us on socials. Facebook and Instagram are our bread and butter at the moment, so reach out to us through either of those avenues. Bears and Beers Podcast, give it a search. And until next week, gents, looking forward to the Melbourne games, and we'll see you next week.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.